The FIFA 2026 World Cup is done. It's over. It's done and dusted. It's in the history books, and I figured because I'm a huge sports guy, as I'm sure you guys know, and because we did a video sort of going over all the teams and predicting the results a couple months ago, I figured I'd do a video sort of quickly reviewing it. And talking about my takeaways and the teams that impressed me and the teams and players that disappointed me and everything like that. So I'm not going to say I'm going to go over every single team, but I just kind of want to talk about things that stuck out to me the most in this tournament. Go through the group stages, go through the groups, and yeah, just give my thoughts. I thought this could be kind of a fun way to bookend the tournament. So yeah. Hopefully the music isn't too loud. It was loud to start. I've lowered it. Anyways, Group A. Mexico got out of it. South Africa, second place. South Korea and Czechia. I was very disappointed in South Korea throughout this. I think they had a good first game against Czechia, but outside of that, they were overall quite disappointing. Czechia is one of the worst teams in the tournament. And I'll talk about the other two. I'll talk about the other two because they made it to the next round, once we get to the knockout round phase of this. But yeah, nothing super surprising. I did predict South Korea to make it out of the group, but they really didn't do themselves proud overall, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, nothing huge. Mexico were very impressive. More or less what people expected. Group B. Again, more or less what people expected, and more or less what I expected. I think this is exactly how I said the standings would shake out. Switzerland were the best team. Canada, a little dicey to start, dominated Bosnia, but obviously destroyed Qatar and played okay against Switzerland, but lost. Bosnia, I think, did themselves proud, and Qatar, for a couple of reasons. They had a great draw against Switzerland, but I don't know. I wasn't a fan about how their coach acted, and especially after the horrible leg break on Manu Kone, stuff like that. Yeah, Qatar are one of the worst teams in the tournament, but yeah, them and Czechia I think were two of the worst. I didn't really look forward to their games much unless a team I was really interested in was playing against them. This one, Brazil-Morocco, by far the best two teams, Brazil and Morocco. Scotland, I think, got a bit too full of themselves after, don't get me wrong, a historic win against Haiti, but not much else after that. And Haiti, they were fun. They scored a couple of goals against Morocco, that was good. They made a good account of themselves. They played generally decently, but didn't make many waves. United States, Australia, Paraguay, Turkey. One of my biggest disappointments of the tournament. Oh, sorry, you guys can't even see this. Hopefully you've been able to keep up with it despite me covering it with my camera. Group D, United States, Australia, Paraguay, and Turkey. More or less what you'd expect out of the United States, I think. I predicted them to get out of the group. What I didn't predict was the biggest disappointments for me in the tournament, or one of them, Turkey. They played horrifically and were out after 2 games, then played well and beat the States, more to what you'd expect from them, but it was too little too late. They were incredibly disappointing, and I thought they'd do way better. Paraguay, Australia, more or less performed how you thought they would. They're okay, solid teams that made a good account of themselves and both made it through. And the USA... They played very well. I was actually really impressed with how Pochettino had them drilled throughout the tournament. Throughout the first few games. Yeah, they did very well. They look very dynamic. They're one of the most impressive teams across the first couple of games. They looked great. They looked great, young, dynamic, hungry. We'll talk about what happened after that, but to start, they're one of the best teams. Then Group E, Germany, Ivory Coast, Ecuador, Curacao. Curacao was, they got destroyed by Germany, but they made a good account of themselves outside of that. Ecuador and Ivory Coast, their game against each other was a really good game. It was a 1-0 for Ivory Coast, but I thought it was such a fun game. I thought it was great. So yeah, this group, again, going pretty much how I expected it to, more or less. Germany winning out, Ivory Coast and Ecuador both being quite solid. The Ecuador win over Germany was great. And even though Germany won this, you could tell there were some warning signs. Outside of the thrashing of Curacao, they didn't play well against Ecuador, they lost. They got really lucky against Ivory Coast, who should have won that, or at least tied it. Germany won the group in a difficult group, but while the results went their way, you could tell things weren't quite right. The team wasn't quite functioning how they should, and that was a bit of a teaser for things to come. Group F, another sort of predictable one. I think this is exactly the order I thought. Maybe I said Japan will come first. It's a toss-up between Netherlands and Japan. By far the best two in the group. Sweden did quite well and qualified for the next round. Tunisia were one of the worst teams in the tournament to me. They were quite dull to watch. I didn't really enjoy them. But Netherlands-Japan was one of my games of the tournament. Lots of goals. Very fun group. Then Group G, Belgium, Egypt, Iran, New Zealand. After 2 games, every team was tied, right? Every team had 2 draws or something? Or, no, sorry. It was looking to be like that, and then New Zealand lost to, maybe Egypt? I don't remember exactly, but it was a really tight group until the end where Belgium pulled it out. Egypt second. Iran, I felt so bad for them. All the problems they had to deal with in having to cross the border for every game, camping out in Mexico, just horrible. And I really wish that they made it through to the next round, because I think they made a good account of themselves, and they had to deal with more than any other team had to deal with in terms of logistics. New Zealand were okay. They were okay. They had a good game against Iran. That was a really thrilling game. Then they just kind of lost it right at the end against Belgium, I believe. But yeah, I came out of this group thinking that Egypt looked quite solid. Belgium really didn't get it together until the last game, but they kind of grew into the tournament. And yeah, I felt that about Iran. Spain, Cabo Verde, Uruguay, and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, more or less, what you'd expect. A couple of draws, which is cool. Spain, obviously the winners. I would say very deserved winners, but we'll talk about them in a bit. Cabo Verde, one of the stories of the tournament, if not the story, almost upset the world champions, almost pulled out the most historic World Cup result of all time in the round of 32. But even still, one of the stories of the tournament, incredibly beautiful, feel-good story. I think there is some evidence with a lot of 5-1, 6-1s, 5-0, 4-0. There were lots of thrashings. Fun to see lots of goals, but lots of thrashings. There was quite a bit of evidence for the fact that, or for the idea that extending to 48 teams kind of made it a bit imbalanced, kind of led to a lot of just thrashings. But Cabo Verde is one of the examples about why that is a beautiful thing, why it's a great thing, because teams like this can just, that are well-drilled, with lots of quality, with lots of identity, they knew how they wanted to play, they were very well-drilled, they knew what they were, they didn't shrink to the occasion, they rose to it. Just beautiful, inspirational story. They are a shining example about why extending the amount of teams can be a great thing. And one of the biggest disappointments of this tournament, Uruguay. As you guys know, or maybe not, my 2 teams that I have allegiances to were Canada, I live in Canada, and Uruguay. I'm Uruguayan, my dad is born there. They were horrible this tournament. You could tell there was a bit of, there was a discrepancy between Bielsa, what the coach wanted them to do, and what they actually did. They didn't really agree. The big players, specifically Valverde, and the midfield in general, they didn't really show up. The tactics didn't really work. They just, basically, Uruguay had to beat Saudi Arabia or Cabo Verde. That's all they had to do. Specifically, let's say they just had to beat Saudi Arabia to make it to the next round. They couldn't do that, and all respect to Saudi Arabia, they are, man for man, they are a consistently way stronger team. But they just did not do themselves proud in the actual performances. They They played well against Saudi Arabia, but couldn't really put it away. The Cabo Verde game was a thriller, and in Spain they were just lacking in any punch or thrust, and they resorted to a lot of rough play and losing their temper and just kind of losing it, and it was honestly really, really annoying and frustrating as someone who was supporting them. I left this tournament very proud of Canada. I could not say the same for Uruguay. This Group I, was lots of fun. France, Norway, Senegal, Iraq. Iraq, ew, one of the worst teams, got destroyed consistently. But Norway and Senegal were lots of fun in this group. Their game against each other was great. France, man, for a good while, I'm just like, who is catching this team? They are unstoppable. Are they perfect? No, but they have such offensive thrust, such aura, and such quality. They have Mbappe just scoring goals for fun. Dembele pops up with a random hat-trick. Olise assisting goals for fun. And then on the other side, they have a really good player on the left side with either Barcola or Doué, both of whom are Champions League winners, two of the best attackers in Europe. You have Cherki on the bench. You have a really solid foundation in Rabiot and Tchouaméni or Kone in the midfield. Now, I think that got exposed a little bit down the line, and then a very, very solid defensive partnership with Saliba and Upamecano. Fullbacks leave a little bit to be desired, but we're still solid enough. Just, they looked unstoppable in this group, and they were so entertaining. They had such swagger. I loved watching France so much, and I was kind of going for them. Not only because I picked them to win, but I was really going for them. Because I loved how they played. You know that gif of Mbappe just going like to the crowd, and those two French women who are fans just going like, woo! Love it, love it. Group J, Argentina, Austria, Algeria, Jordan. The Algeria-Austria game was an absolute thriller. Outside of that, I think this group was kind of not super interesting. More or less what you'd predict would happen, but history made for Algeria. That one good game. Jordan, they looked okay in spurts, but never really were up to the standard of everyone else. And Argentina never really got out of second gear, I thought. But Messi, my God, I didn't think at age 39 he'd be able to be one of the best best players in a World Cup. But good God, respect to him. We'll talk more about Argentina in a second. Then Colombia, Portugal, Congo, and Uzbekistan. I thought Portugal would come first, but Colombia looked better than them, straight up. They had more identity, they were more cohesive. Colombia looked like a true dark horse earlier on in the tournament, and Portugal were quite disappointing, but they had enough to make it through. Congo, I think, made a good account of themselves, made history, made it to the next round. Uzbekistan were pretty disappointing. I thought they'd do better. But yeah, Colombia were really, really impressive here. And then England, Group L with England, Croatia, Ghana, Panama. England looked... It was interesting, because England looked good in the sense that their structure and their player quality was enough to dig them out of holes against good teams, against Croatia, for instance. It was really encouraging that they were able to win a thriller and outscore a quality side, and even in spite of the performance not being great, them being able to get the result, and Kane and Bellingham being able to perform, I think it boded well, and I was under the impression that they would gel and begin to look more cohesive down the line. Did that happen? We'll get to it. But England looked, the performances weren't great, but I was encouraged generally, under the assumption that they'd click. Croatia looked more or less how you thought Croatia would look. Lots of quality, a bit old, but lots of quality and enough to make it through. And Ghana, one of the most defensive sides, but hey, good for them, it worked in the group. And Panama, no big disgrace or anything, like they didn't get thrashed, but they just didn't have a lot about them. So that was the group stages. A couple of surprises, big disappointments in Turkey and Uruguay, awesome surprises in Cabo Verde. I also think Norway looked better than I thought they would. Congo as well looked really good. But yeah, nothing super big outside of that. Really entertaining, tons of goals. Loved it. Then we get to the knockout round. Germany, Paraguay, incredible upset, and it really sort of solidified Germany just never really looked like how they should look. Not only, like, their coach, Nagelsmann, looked incredibly inept to me. He didn't quite know what to do, but also just, it's the worst German squad I've seen in my life. I've been watching World Cup since 2006, and it's definitely the worst Germany side I've seen in my life in terms of player quality. So they need to refresh, they need to do something and start moving forward, but I was really proud of Paraguay. It looked really, it was incredible what they did here. France just dismantled Sweden. Again, they just kept rolling, and I just kept thinking, oh my god, they are inevitable. Okay, World Cup for Sweden. I feel like Sweden has very similar World Cups to this pretty often. Into the knockout rounds, early exit. More or less what I expected. South Africa looked, it was incredible, because their first game against Mexico, they looked completely toothless. I just thought they were going to get destroyed for the rest of the tournament, but they really got it together. They put together an identity, and Canada faced up against them in the round of 32, historic for both sides, and I think Canada were definitely the better team, but South Africa had the better game plan and a better structure, and I think it's just a bit more player quality from Canada's side got them through, and I was delighted with the Eustáquio goal. Canadian history. I was really happy, because to me, what I wanted for Canada was to make it out of the group. I think given the player quality that we had, it was it would have been a huge failure not to. And then, yeah, you make it to the knockout round for the first time in history, but given the teams you're seeded against, I think South Africa are a solid side, but I think Canada are better, and looking at that, I'm like, I think I would personally be disappointed if we don't win that. We won it, and then I was happy. History made into the last 16. At that point, anything else is a bonus. So that was great. Really proud of Canada. It's unfortunate. It makes me wonder, what could have happened if Alphonso Davies was actually fit? Because he comes on against South Africa. He looks by far the best player, but he's clearly not able to run properly. He's nursing a hamstring problem. If Kone hadn't horrifically broken his leg, if we had Flores fit, if Bombito wasn't fighting fitness throughout, like, there was a lot of what ifs, and even still, Canada did themselves proud, so I'm a happy Canadian. The atmosphere throughout the country, in the city, in and around my local area down in Toronto, it was fantastic. It was such a great experience. Love the Netherlands-Morocco game. I really enjoyed it. I could have gone a coin flip on this one. I projected these two to face each other, and I think Netherlands looked quite good in the group. So did Morocco, and it just ended up being two quality sides, unfortunately facing each other too early, because I think both of these teams are roughly top 10 in the world, but facing in the round of 32, that's a rough one. So Netherlands kind of got done a little bit dirty with the seeding. But nonetheless, one of them had to win, and Morocco won on penalties. I wouldn't consider this a huge failure for Netherlands. Yes, they're out way earlier than they wanted to be, but they were against Morocco, who's very good. So it's disappointing, but they looked quite good to me. They were impressive. But again, you got to make it farther, so it's hard not to be disappointed if you're Dutch. But I liked what I saw from Netherlands. Somerville was good. The defense was good. The midfield was one of the better ones in the tournament, I thought. Yeah, and Morocco, just back to front, incredibly solid team. I think just reinforcing that in the last 4 or so years, they're easily a top 8 or so team in the world. Portugal, Croatia, thriller in Toronto. Why'd I pronounce the T? Thriller in Toronto. The Croatians and Portuguese contingent swarming the streets of Toronto. It was the atmosphere was amazing. I think it was here where I'm like, man, Portugal won this, so good for Portugal. Croatia's a tough test, but you could just tell Croatia, they weren't top, they weren't semifinal material anymore. They had gotten a bit too old. Lots of quality, but just a bit much for Modric's last dance. But Portugal, even in spite of winning, I felt like they were winning in spite of their game plan, in spite of their tactics, in spite of their manager. I think that teams with a just okay to mediocre manager can sometimes make deep runs because of the player quality, or because they have the managers have just enough about them to make it through. International football is kind of like that, but my God, Roberto Martinez is so bad at platforming his players. He has the best midfield duo in all of the world that play together at club level, that just won the Champions League, and he can't have them functioning properly. He has Bruno Fernandes, who is the best player in the Premier League, in my opinion, playing way further up the field than he should be, or a bit too close to, like, nowhere near the central areas where he's most influential. He just had no idea what he was doing with this team, Roberto Martinez, and it made Portugal one of the biggest disappointments for me. Even though they made it to the round of 16, which is not like a complete catastrophe, but the way they played was awful. Spain, what's great about, or what's the thing about national tournaments like this that run for several rounds, is that the teams that start off well don't always maintain that level. I think you kind of saw that with France maybe a little bit, or USA in this tournament. And the teams that start off slowly, you see them click into gear. You saw that with Argentina in 2022. They lost to, I believe, Saudi Arabia in the first game. They really clicked into gear. They got it together. They got the momentum, and they won the whole tournament. Spain, around this time, when they beat Austria, really just swept them aside. I thought, ooh, they're kind of growing into this, and it's much more promising to grow into a tournament and get some of the rough performances out of the way early than to look dominant early and maybe have your bad game in the quarterfinals or semifinals. And Spain, we're getting momentum here, and around here I'm like, ooh, Spain, all right. USA, really just pretty easily dispatched Bosnia. Austria had a okay tournament, more or less what you'd expect from Austria. Bosnia made history in making the knockout rounds, but USA had just had too much firepower. And then Belgium-Senegal, one of the best matches of the whole tournament. Senegal were better for almost 90 minutes, but then Belgium put it together. Tielemans, new United player, which I'm pretty happy about, had such quality in picking out his passes, remaining calm even when they were up against it. Lukaku, like the offensive power just really, for Belgium, really shined through, and Senegal just collapsed. It was really kind of heartbreaking to see it, but kudos to Belgium for being able to stick it out, and Belgium really started getting momentum as well. Belgium really grew into this tournament too, despite a bit of a rough start. Brazil, I didn't really talk about them. Brazil didn't look super great at first, but then Ancelotti started platforming their better players. Vinicius started playing very well. Cunha played very well. Big fan of Cunha. And I had a good feeling about Brazil as they entered the next round. However, it became very clear that the moment they face opposition that is good, they lose the midfield battle. Bruno Guimaraes is a great player in the prime of his career, amazing for Newcastle. I think he could make the move to Arsenal, and it would be a great move. He's one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. And so that's not the problem with Brazil, but playing him with Casemiro, that midfield was a bit too lackadaisical. Not enough thrust, not enough oomph. I think Ancelotti put too much emphasis on the unks for Brazil. Too much Casemiro, too much Danilo, not trusting in youth enough. Andre Santos just signed for United. Maybe it's a bit early for him, but why not? He played well for Chelsea this past year. Why not add him as something different for midfield for Brazil? A bit more youth, a bit more dynamism. Pair him with Bruno Guimaraes. That could be something really good. Paquetá, I don't think really is going to be influencing games much at this stage of his career. Yeah, Brazil, the moment they look good against the teams that they should beat, and they were platformed well, but the moment they were up against decent sides, Morocco, Japan, Norway, they really looked like they were exposed, and they were really lucky to beat Japan. My heart bled for Japan because I loved the way they played. I thought they were really dynamic, really vibrant side, unlucky with some injuries. And I think they could have made it far if maybe one of their injured players wasn't out, like Endo or Mitoma. And even with them out, they really could have beaten Brazil, but unfortunately for them, they got knocked out at the round of 32, and I think they could have had a great game against Norway. They were really unlucky against Brazil. So again, their standing in the round of 32, the loss, doesn't really reflect how good they were, because I thought they were really good. It was a sad one, but the bracket giveth and taketh away, and this is one of those rough matchups. Ivory Coast, Norway, great game. I think, two really even sides, but this is where I started really properly believing in Norway. They looked great in the group stages, but, you never know if it's kind of false gold. But beating a good side in Ivory Coast, Holland looking like an absolute talisman, it gave me good vibes for the game against Brazil in the next round, and it made that a really enticing one. Mexico really just kind of dominated Ecuador. Ecuador couldn't really get a foothold. They were okay in this tournament. They had a really good win against Germany, but overall, were a bit too toothless in attack. Solid in midfield and defense, not good enough in attack. England versus Congo. England got away with one. They really did. Their Congo looked great. They looked really, really fantastic. England just had too much star power with Kane and Bellingham and high-end players, and it helped them overpower Congo, but the warning signs were really there. And up until this point, Croatia game was good, but outside of that, England were looking really... It was just like, they got to get it together. Argentina, Cabo Verde, already talked about that. Argentina... Let's just talk about Argentina really quickly. Argentina were the villains of this World Cup, and it's like every round... To go ahead for a second, every round Argentina had a thriller, a last gasp win, this extra time win against the quintessential underdogs, these beautiful inspirational underdogs in Cabo Verde, that they won. Absolute thriller, come from behind against Egypt, 2-0 into 3-2. Where Egypt collapsed. Then this come from behind win against Switzerland, beating them in extra time. Then to come from behind 2 goals in a few minutes against England in the semis. Every single game Argentina played was an absolute thriller. And, did they get an easier whistle at times? I do think so. For instance, certain tackles. I don't know why that Egypt goal being called back is a rough one. And just generally, a lot of the players didn't really coat themselves in good sportsmanship. Whether it be some celebrations, shoving it in England players' faces, being kind of disrespectful in that way. There was the dicey thing with the Egypt manager signaling for racism. I don't really know what went on there. And then even in the final with Paredes just shoving players all over the place, these rough tackles, this poor sportsmanship, pushing just this dirty play after and during the game. I wasn't a big fan of Argentina's conduct generally, their fans, the racist chants from the fans throughout, but in spite of all that, the actual football, I respected so much. Their ability to constantly never say die. The commitment that Messi had to roll back the years and be one of the best players in the world, world class. And he just looked inevitable in these games. And then the ability for the whole team to fight for their country, die on the field, die for Messi. It was just incredible. They had one of the most epic World Cup runs I've ever seen. I could see people questioning the talent of the opposition, but look, Cabo Verde tied Spain, the winners, beat Uruguay. Egypt finished ahead of, Australia finished ahead of the likes of Turkey. Egypt looked really good against Belgium, more or less on equal footing with Belgium early on. You can only beat the teams that you face, right? You can only beat what's in front of you. They faced Switzerland, and people said that was a soft one, but Switzerland played very well. They were a big challenge, and Switzerland beat Colombia. So, Switzerland beat Colombia, who beat Portugal. It's like, yeah, would Argentina versus Portugal be really hype and more thrilling than an Argentina-Switzerland quarterfinal? Sure, but Switzerland were simply better than Portugal. They were better than Colombia. They won. So, I don't really buy that easy route thing. And then England are in spite of what Tuchel did, a really good team. Anyway, Argentina, Egypt, that was a thriller. I really like how close a lot of these were. Commiserations to Australia, but Egypt, I do think, were the better team. Switzerland pretty comfortably beat Algeria. Colombia beat Ghana. Really looked good, I thought, Colombia. It was only 1-0, but Colombia really put it together. And I was thinking, round of 16, Colombia are genuine dark horses. I thought they'd beat Switzerland, and I thought they had a good chance of beating Argentina if they faced them. They looked like one of the best teams in the tournament. Let's go up from here then. However, they just looked... I don't know what happened against Switzerland. Switzerland looked really good in the midfield. They really sort of shut them down and nullified them. Luis Diaz couldn't put it together. James, it was unfortunate, but they really couldn't bring it together against Switzerland, and Switzerland just generally, like I said, nullified them at every turn. It was a disappointing out, and Colombia, who looked really impressive to start, kind of petered out when it really counted as they started to make a run against Switzerland. But Switzerland impressed me. Mentioned the Argentina-Egypt game. That was a rough one. Egypt can consider themselves hard done by in a couple of ways, but ultimately I respect the Argentinian fight back a lot. In spite of them, yeah, were they lucky? Sure. But it's not like they were passengers. They absolutely felt inevitable. They felt inevitable in that game, and the whole team, how dynamic and cohesive they looked, how they played and fought for each other. It was unbelievable. One of the games of the tournament, this one. Another game of the tournament, Mexico-England. This is where I started really believing in England. Because this was their most impressive performance. Mexico at the Azteca, this team who had not conceded a single goal, down to 10 men for a decent portion of the game, and Mexico looked out of ideas, simply. They couldn't do anything against England's low block, their professionalism, their tactical nous and know-how. Tuchel looked great in this game, and from here I'm like, okay, they can kick on into the quarterfinals. They look great. That was a great performance. And Norway, straight up, were better than Brazil. Norway are a better team than Brazil. They looked more dominant in midfield with Sander Berge. They looked like a better offense, a more well-drilled machine. Brazil were just exposed. And another disappointing World Cup for Brazil. I, in my life, have not seen Brazil play a good World Cup, really. I guess they made it to the semis, right? So that was a deep run. But then they lost 7-1 in 2014? But Norway, man, and at this point, I had become a diehard Norway fan, a bandwagon Norway fan. Holland became the world's darling. I just love the makeup of the team. I think Odegaard works really well with Sander Berge. I think the defense is very solid. They have a distinct identity, lots of power in how they play. The Viking stuff, it was great. Belgium, they kind of just little broed USA. You could tell who the pretenders were, and you could tell who was overwhelmed by the occasion, and it wasn't Belgium. USA just picked the worst time to have their worst performance, and Belgium just looked at home. They weren't overwhelmed by the spotlight, and they looked great. Credit to Portugal for making it very tough for Spain, but again, the Spain train kept rolling, and it's weird to say that Portugal had a disastrous World Cup, because I don't think they did in some ways. When they lost to the eventual champions, they won a knockout game, but they just looked so bad in comparison to what they could have been. I truly think Portugal, with a good manager, potentially beats Spain, with a midfield to rival theirs, with a great defense, an offense that is not awesome, but neither is Spain's. Let's be honest. Spain were incredibly impressive throughout this tournament, but their best aspect was not their offense. That was their weakest. It was their incredibly cohesive midfield, the way they're platformed, how they nullified and dominated teams through their midfield and their pressing and their system, which does involve the offense, but in terms of scoring, Oyarzabal, he scored a decent amount of goals. Yamal looked good, but they ultimately didn't look like sparkling Spain offenses of the past. They weren't a world-class offense, and they won it because of their dominant overall game plan in midfield. And I think Portugal, with a good manager, could have really gone toe-to-toe with them, but unfortunately, Portugal is managed by a fraud. Hopefully, Jorge Jesus platforms their players better. I still think they could do good things at the Euros. Canada, what can you say? Made a good run at it against Morocco, but Morocco is just better. They're just better. They're one of the best teams in the world, and they showed it. And then Paraguay versus France. I gained a lot of respect for Paraguay against Germany, but they played so dirty against France. I had no respect for that, and France ground it out. And they played poorly, or not, they didn't play super well, but they still ascended above a very difficult game and still won it, which I thought was a good sign. Then, in the quarterfinals, dominated Morocco. Morocco looked quite disappointing, but France just also didn't let them play, and I'm just like, they are just inevitable. It's coming home to Paris. I really thought France would just walk the rest of the World Cup at this point, because they just look so good. Spain, tight one against Belgium. Belgium, I think, did themselves proud, and Spain, they didn't look great, but they had faced quality opposition in Portugal and then Belgium, and had prevailed, which was a really good sign. And again, they were gaining momentum, which made the France-Spain game really enticing. But I still predicted at this point that France would just about have too much for Spain, too much firepower. I'll get to that in a second. I was wrong, of course. Norway, England, good game. I think Norway they just kind of ran out of gas. I think England got lucky with the ball hitting the wire thing. That was weird. It was a good game. I felt bad because Norway they were just gassed. They didn't have the endurance and stamina in those hot conditions, and I think if they played again, Norway could have easily won. England didn't look very good. Norway didn't look super good either. Holland had his worst game at the tournament, and it was just too bad that it happened in this game. But hey, England scored when they needed to. I don't think they played very well, but Norway did themselves proud. I felt bad, but Norway did themselves proud. A true dark horse in the tournament, and they look a threat for future tournaments, next Euros, next World Cup. Holland will be in the prime of his career. The other players won't be too old either. Norway looked great, and they're, to me, one of the success stories of the World Cup. But England went marching on. It did look a bit dicey. Like, all the good work they did against Mexico, for me, they didn't play well against Norway, but they still made it through, and results-based business. It's the sort of thing where if they keep winning, you look at it as like, well, they got the job done with their quality. They were clearly platformed well if they kept winning, but if it's where it doesn't work out, it goes, they kind of fluked it. We'll see how it went. Argentina versus Switzerland, already talked about that one. Argentina just had too much, but Switzerland, really, really solid tournament. Quarterfinals, almost beat Argentina. Great account of themselves. Then England versus Argentina, the biggest bottle job by a manager I have seen in a minute. England looked great for 55, 60 minutes. They score. The game plan's working. They're taking the game to Argentina. They're playing to their strength. High pressing. The midfield being stepping on. What am I trying to say? The midfield being aggressive, stepping up, taking the game to Argentina, and they nullified them, and not completely, but to a decent extent, and they took the game to them, and they scored through this dynamism and this aggression. What do? Tuchel brings on 70 different defenders, takes off their midfielders. They have no outlet. They have no outlet going forward. They just have height to defend crosses for half an hour. Plus, I can understand that for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, plus extra time. I can understand it if you're a man down against Mexico. What are you going to do? I get it. But against Argentina, a team who are one of the better offenses in the tournament in the world, who have Messi, who is still at age 39, one of the best in the world at picking through defenses, one of the best teams in the world at teams that are sitting back, one of the best teams in the world at getting up ahead of steam. And England let them play. They sat back, they stopped doing what was working. They let them play from minute 60 onwards. They brought on Dan Burn and Konsa. who are good players, don't get me wrong, but they're good players in a specific context, not in the context where you need an outball. You need to keep doing what was working up till this point. You have 11 men, bring the game to them. And it got to the point where England, I understand Declan Rice had an injury, but you have Kobe Mainoo on the bench, who's a great outlet, tons of quality on the ball, tons of composure on the ball. You had wingers on the bench with tons of quality. Saka, Saka might, I'm not sure how the context of Saka in this game, but Rashford, I didn't understand the approach at all, and they were punished for it, and it was inevitable. And credit to Argentina, because they just kept going, they kept calm, and they just dominated England for the last half hour, and England deserved to lose, even if they were really good for more than half the game. Tuchel completely bottled it. I couldn't believe it. And then Argentina in the finals. It felt inevitable. But then this game, France versus Spain. Up to this game, I was so excited for it. I couldn't really predict exactly what was going to happen with confidence, because Spain were really building in momentum, and they looked like the best. They looked like the overall best put together team out of the Final Four. England were kind of making it up as they went. Argentina were built off these epic comebacks in the last gasp moments of matches, very clutch. But building off momentum rather than looking like holistically an amazing team. And France looked like, to me, the best team in the tournament. But it was more so because of their incredible power and offense. That just was incredible. That just made them look like champions-elect. So I thought in this game it would be a really good tactical battle, and France, if I had to guess, I thought France would have just a bit too much firepower to overwhelm Spain. But my goodness, France played their worst game, but Spain played their best. Spain, masterclass in the midfield, completely dominated them technically, tactically. They knew when to press up, when to hold back. They knew that they couldn't progress through the midfield in the way that Spain kind of tempted them to with Tchouaméni and Rabiot, who are not progressors of the ball. They just provide a platform, and they stifled them. They didn't allow Olise to dictate, and when he had the ball, he didn't play well. They didn't allow Mbappe to get ahead of steam. They didn't allow Dembele or Doué or Cherki or anyone to really have time on the ball, and they stifled that path to their amazing magical front four in a way that I didn't think was possible. And not only that, they played. They dominated them. They completely dominated them, not just technically, but physically as well, through their ability to cover ground. Fabian Ruiz, Rodri, and Dani Olmo, long-legged physical monsters, as well as being technically amazing, and they dominated France. They completely made them look like boys versus men. I was so impressed by Spain, and I was so shocked that France looked so insipid, but they did. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, Spain are the best team. They are winning this World Cup. Even though Argentina looked inevitable, I still thought Spain would win it. Then we get to today's final. Well, let's just get to the 6-4 England-France game. Pure insanity. Crazy game. Love that. But this game, Argentina, they still didn't get a single shot on net, right? I was really shocked by how defensive they were. They stuck in there, and they were clearly trying to frustrate Spain and maybe get goals on the break or from set pieces and moments of magic like that. But it really didn't work, and Spain were very deserved winners. They dominated, and they're, by and large, very deserving winners to me. They were the best team holistically. They grew into the tournament. Like I said, they don't have the best offense. I think England have better players in their offense. France absolutely do. But as a whole collective team, with a plan, a game plan, tactics, and an identity set out by their amazing coach, holistically, Spain were the best. They just were. The best midfield, I think maybe the best. If you look at their team, if you look at their starting team, Kubarsi looked incredible. Porro was great. Laporta was great. Cucurella, one of the best left backs in the world, the best left back in the tournament. Rodri and Ruiz, incredible dynamic with those two. Rodri maybe the player of the tournament. Olmo was great. Yamal didn't have the world-class tournament that maybe some thought he'd have, but he contributed enough quality to be to be I guess to shoulder the offense. Oyarzabal, collection of goals. Baena did his job. Like, Simon was really good. Benching Pedri was, I think, a big move for them going forward. Congrats to Ferran Torres. I don't really rate him much as a player, but hey, the winning goal in a World Cup final, that's all you need. Marino came up with goals here, a goal against Belgium. So yeah, just overall the best team, deserved winners. And I gotta say, this could be my favorite World Cup. This final was a horrible game. I really didn't enjoy it, unfortunately, so it wasn't a final representative of the entertainment value of the whole World Cup. But you look at these games: Belgium, Senegal, Argentina, Egypt, England, Argentina, Mexico, England, Norway, Brazil. Like, the quality of some of these games, Portugal, Croatia, Brazil, Japan, Brazil, Norway, like, some of these games were just unbelievably good. The third place match, so many great games, such a great tournament, great narratives, good upsets, Cabo Verde, and some heroic teams like Cabo Verde, but Norway, loved them. And in the end, I think a very deserved champion. Anyways, that is my ramble here, my review of the World Cup. I loved it. I loved it. It was far more entertaining than the Premier League season to me. I hope this year we have a more entertaining Premier League season. I'm really excited for it going forward. Hopefully my Manchester United can put a good season together. There's some cool signings. They need more. I'm looking forward to the English Premier League, but this World Cup scratched an itch that I had not been scratched for a while, and it was better entertainment value, better pure football than the Premier League, and a lot of the Champions League as well, and a decent amount of what I'd seen in Europe and Spain and France and Italy, and Germany is good, but even Germany, like, it was such a breath of fresh air. I loved it. I love being able to just finish a stream and turn on the TV and there's a game. Finish dinner, turn on the TV, there's a game. Go to sleep because some of these games are really late. Wake up and see that it was this incredible thriller and check out the highlights. What a beautiful month. I enjoyed sharing my thoughts about it with you guys during streams and in the Discord and stuff. And yeah, let me know what you guys thought. Who were some of the heroes and the dark horses and the really exciting breakout teams or players in this tournament? Who were the disappointments? Were Spain deserved winners? What did you guys think about Argentina's sort of embracing the role of villains? What about France and England, who made deep runs but couldn't really cut it? Or maybe the likes of some of the host nations like Mexico and USA and Canada, or teams like Belgium or Ivory. Like, just let me know. Let me know what you thought of this tournament. I had tons of fun. And it might be the best World Cup I've seen in my life. I'd have to think about it, but it could easily be. Anyways, that's all I got for today. I just recorded it, and I'm uploading this the same day. There'll be another video, I think, about anime or video games in another couple days. But I wanted to get this out because it's very topical. And some of you guys are into the sports content, so appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. I'm uploading this very late, so have a good night. And I'll see you next time.